me.
Activision owns Laura Bow Mysteries and Gabriel Knight.
That's a monopoly.
No. Well, hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, but in a slightly different location, and I don't know where he'll be to the left or right of me, is
Saul Bridges, bringing y'all lucky episode 247?
5. Good
245.
job.
245.
Yeah, we missed an episode in there. I don't
It's
blame you for
247. I got to move my flight up.
Oh, no. But next to me, who has to move his flight up now, is Mr.
Chris Figs.
There we go.
It's me. It's a me.
Hey, Chris.
Look, I made a mistake, boys. I meant to go get a Diet Pepsi before we started, so y'all do y'all's thing. Let me go get my soda.
All right, well, cool. If you are new to the podcast for some reason, I almost said it myself. If you're new to the podcast for some reason, this, of course, is a PlayStation-based podcast, but we talk about gaming at large. And, of course, a good conversation around today is going to be over the Microsoft acquisition of Activision. And with it, their seminal IP like Pitfall and
Interstate
Lost Vikings
76.
and Interstate 76, such losses for the industry at large. But we will talk about that in the long run. As of right now, we like to get this show started off the right way. And I will go ahead and say, as anyone who's been on any of the social media stuff, I do have the COVIDs, but I'm on the very tail end of it. I jinxed myself last episode. Instead of trying to be COVID-free since 2023, I should have been content with being COVID-free since 93. And, you know, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
This is becoming a mess.
Here I am. Oh, no. Oh, no. Mateo's.
Y'all need
so
to try
I'll
this.
tell you, I have not had Mateo's since I've been sick, and I kind of want it, but I'm worried.
You can buy this at like Walmart Neighborhood Market. For all those that like salsa, go try it. It's really good. I was in my fridge, and I was like, you know what? The world has to know.
The world does have to know. Go get your Diet Bussy. All right. Anyway, we're going to get the show started off the right way. So while Saul's doing his thing, I will go ahead and let Chris regale you with all of his gaming that he's been having over the past week. So, Chris, what you been up to?
I've basically only been playing 2 games. I've been playing Loop Hero on Switch, which is shockingly fun, and Outriders on PS5.
Outriders.
Yes.
And a healthy dose of Apex, from what I understand.
Yes, a healthy dose of Apex, but that is kind of an assumed infliction for me now, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. I don't know, you seem to have moments, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm on and I'm like, oh, Chris is playing Apex, no surprise. But what's more surprising when I feel like I get on and like for every day for 2 weeks, I'm like, Chris isn't playing Apex.
Yeah, the biggest drop-off I had was with Destiny when I just played far too much Destiny. I think it was COVID brain because I recovered from COVID. Now I'm kind of like, I'm okay.
I don't blame you, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if I've chased you down this rabbit hole for this platinum, and you leave me hanging, and having put another 80 to 100 hours into Destiny 2.
Wait, is Chris starting to play Destiny?
No,
I don't know.
I still have it installed. I just haven't turned it on in a while.
Don't let Chris betray you. Don't let Chris betray you. He's already betrayed me.
Don't make the mistake that one of my friends has done in assuming that I'm going to continue playing Destiny at any point.
No, I figured you'd at least play till we did a raid, though.
Well, I have
done
raided. I've done a couple of raids.
Yeah, he's done 2 of the most challenging raids. He hasn't done he didn't get to do Scourge, which sucks, but you can do Deepstone Crypt, which is the new Surge from what I understand. So
yeah, it's pretty quick.
If only I could have done Deepstone Crypt when I had.
Hey, I haven't done it. So we had the same problem yesterday to this point where I was all game to do it, and then everybody stopped texting back, and I was like, I know Chris is just waiting, but it's not like he ever agreed to anything anyway. So I'm just gonna wait.
To be fair, I said I'm good for any time.
You did. You're the only person. You were the only person.
Everybody.
Well, I was at my dad's birthday celebration yesterday. We played some laser tag, did some bowling. So
I saw some bowling. I saw a good picture, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, what'd you bowl?
Ooh, I bowled 169, 170 something, and then I think I broke a 200. I don't remember.
Oof. All right, so I think that answers your question, Chris. When you come, you gotta pay to get your bowling ball down here, right?
Yeah, you're probably right.
That
I
way
do
you can
have
show
to
me
do it.
up because I bowl like a 140 to like a 160 if I'm really, really feeling good, and I haven't bowled in a while, so that might not even be true now.
His wife will
was,
bowl better than all of us put together.
She used to at one point.
Oh yeah,
I wonder if she still will.
Me and her are competing. I'm down.
Well, see, she was on bowling team at school in high school. But you know that when you haven't done bowling a whole lot in 10 years past that, it's not like it really matters.
True.
So, but she's still normally pretty good.
Yeah, my dad was like, "Oh, we're doing $20 a game, right?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." Then I hit 5 strikes in a row, and he's like, "So this is a practice game, right?" I'm like, "Nah, run me my money, bro."
Yeah, see, that's exactly. And then you say, "Okay, Dad, listen, I will accept gift cards for Longhorn Steakhouse." That's a joke that will never die, Chris. I know that. I have high hopes that you understand that. I have hopes that you come down here with at least one gift card.
I will bring you one gift card from Longhorns,
and I will tell your dad thank you. Just because. Anyway, clearly you owe me nothing. I just, I'm telling you, when you have COVID and you can't go anywhere, you start to know what's important to you. I've been wanting Longhorns all week. And I'm just like, I can't wait to be out of quarantine because I'm like, I'm going to go mess up an outlaw ribeye. I'm so glad that my taste buds have not been affected at all, that, at least yet. I hope that they continue to not be. I figure it would be weird for me to suddenly be getting better and then be like, oh, no taste and no smell. But oh well. Anyway, moving along. So those are your 3.
Yes.
How you feeling about Outriders now that you're giving it a real decent length to play?
I like it. There's something about it, but it's also bad Destiny. Like, it's just Destiny worse.
So you took a break from Destiny to play Destiny, but worse?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I like the third person view for it. I think that's kind of the difference I needed, and I have to find something to do while I'm waiting for Dying Light. Only 11 days.
That was the thing about the Division 1. The Division 2 just never clicked with me. The Division 1 I liked for a good 20, 30 hours. And there was something about moving off of something like Destiny and trying to play a similar game but third person. I kind of like the extra field of view, but that was, I think, a console problem at the time, right? Because Destiny 2 on console was real choked off. But on PS5, you get a better field of view even with first person, so it's not so weird. But it is nice sometimes to have those types of games in third person. I always like in Destiny when you swap to a sword or something and you go third person. I kind of at this point don't see why they don't just give up the hog and for PvE activities just let you choose if you want to play third or first. I get for PvP it doesn't necessarily match up that way, but they'll probably
Dares of Eternity does that, doesn't it? Like there's parts in Dares of Eternity like where I feel like you're in kind of like a third person mode all of a sudden.
Not during combat. There are a couple parts in Dares, like whenever you go to step on the plates to select your next door, whenever you're choosing the final gambit or the final boss area to see if you guess right and get Star Horse's favor, it'll pull you out to third person so you can see which plate you're standing on correctly. But it doesn't really happen in combat now.
Huh.
I wish it did. That would be really cool. One of the only ways that people have ever really been able to play the game in third person is with the snowball glitch, where you pick up the snowball, throw it, and immediately start trying to shoot or whatever it was, and it would leave the reticule there, and you'd still be in third person from the snowball, and you could shoot. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, I saw what you've been up to, what you've been playing. I know you're back on Destiny as of this week, but you been playing anything else?
I am back on Destiny. I have been kind of chipping away. It's one of those games that I won't mention, similar to Dragon Age. I mean, not Dragon Age, Dragon Quest. But Persona 5, I'm still playing Persona 5. I am through the very first palace, which is at this point uncharted territories for me. So, but I did start up Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and I'm not too far into that though. Like, I got through like the main tutorial,
yeah,
I should say, and then like there's this area where, like, where you have like these, I don't know, like 10 duels, and they can branch off to more tutorials, and I'm in the middle of that area.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet. though I did tell Blaze, like I said, download and play it. And I know Sean in the Discord's playing it as well. He was talking about it. And one of the things I was worried about is I wondered how meta the decks that you're going to be going against were. And you got to get up to that point. So that's good. But what kind of struck me as odd is there's a lot of cards missing. It's like it's using a different ban list to a degree, it feels like, or at least in the sense that there's cards that are just not in the game yet. Because I was like, hey, is Mystic Mine in the game? Just out of curiosity. I was like, because, normally in those games, like the Switch one, there's that Mystic Mine Exodia deck you can go against and things like Ghost Tricks and stuff. And it seems like some of those just aren't in the game yet, which is weird, but I guess the game was shadow dropped. So maybe it's not that weird.
Well, and not only that, though, but Sean was talking about, like how Mystic Mine was banned. And at first I thought he was talking about the real game. And I was like, what? So I couldn't even find where that happened. And I was like, well, I don't know what he's talking about. And then I realized that it is banned, but it's banned in the game. So, it has its own ban list.
Yeah, which is weird because I thought the whole point of that was to be, an active duel simulator, basically. But, I mean, it is what it is. Those games often work off of older, outdated ban lists. So it's weird that this one's launching with a completely separate ban list. But it's just weird because it makes people I figure for people who still like to play it in person a lot or through any of the other computer means that are kept up with a normal ban list, it would be weird to play Master Duel and then go and try and play normal because you might get mixed up on what you are and are not allowed to use.
Yeah, I kind of do wish, though, that it was exactly mirrored to the card game. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. It's just it's weird because a part of me wants to download it in case it ever gets in line, and maybe this is literally just a stopgap measure while they shadow dropped it. But I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I kind of just like playing it in person. I don't really know that I want to spend that much time. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's fun, but a lot of the fun is the social nature around it. So
yeah, the whole reason for me to even play it like that or to put time into it would be the similar to playing what was that app called that we used for a while there?
Dawn of a New Era.
Yeah, Dawn of a New Era, just to playtest stuff or to have stuff in real life or that I could afford or wanted to afford in real life. I'm not spending $400 on this Thunder Dragons deck I want to build, but I'll use it on Dawn of a New Era or I'll play it on there.
Getting to try out your Metaphys deck.
Yeah, before I get to buy it. Yeah. So that I think that has value there. But for a full game, I don't know. It's interesting. But if this does truly become an esports style thing, then maybe, us already having skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Might end up paying off. So there's always that kind of aspect.
It might, but the memes have been going on, Yu-Gi-Oh! So fast that people are people getting into Master Duel who haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In a while, and it's like, all right, guys, here we are. I'm summoning a Blue Eyes White Dragon on my first turn. Look how awesome I am. Okay, I'm going to synchro summon this over. I'm going to use this bell to actually use your material. I'm going to go through. I'm going to link summon this dude, and then bam, 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 I'm 4 monsters deep, and here goes basically a negate, and your turn's over, and you're dead.
Yeah,
and the real meta of that game can kind of get like that. So, we'll see. Have you been playing anything else, or is it just us?
That's been pretty much it.
Okay, cool. I've been pretty much Destiny and Halo. Attrition, the new game mode I was telling you about. Quite fun.
Yeah.
Chris, hopefully you get your computer back in time to at least try it, because I think you might like it.
I would like to get that back.
Have you looked into what it is?
No, I haven't even looked at Halo.
So I think you might be into it. I mean, I think it's a pretty cool mix. Whenever I explained it to Saul, he's like, that's cool. Each team has got a respawn pool of 8 respawns. And when you start, every time someone dies, that goes down until there's no more respawns. And then it leaves a little floating orb around, much like in Destiny. And if your enemies or your teammates rather can get to you, they can revive you. And basically the plan is to just kill the other team, exhaust them of their respawns, and then keep them from reviving the people who are already down until you completely beat them. But if it goes on for a little too long, what's called the danger zone starts coming around the map, and it's basically a battle royale bubble that starts closing down and choking you off into a small section of the map so that it gets real hectic depending on how many people are still alive.
That does sound really cool.
It's pretty wild because you can completely demolish a team of respawns, but then slack up and not realize that they can go pop off and pull all the revives, and they can revive their entire team, come back and slaughter you. And it's pretty fun. It's got visually I like the event that's with it, but everything bothers me a little bit because it's like a 80s cyberpunk neon style thing where you have like a floating neon hologram mohawk and like a visor, but everything is kind of designed in this off way where there's this little floating visor, but it's off center and slightly crooked, and it infuriates me to look at, but it's still pretty cool. So yeah, hopefully you get attrition. I think there's 8 more days or 9 more days of the event going on right now. It's quite fun. I like it a lot. So the unfortunate thing that Halo has to deal with here is always that they come out with these fun game modes with events, and then what do? Are people going to be like, hey, we like that game mode, we want it permanent? Or is it always going to be like, well, it's going to go away until we decide to come back with it with some new battle pass stuff?
Yeah, I think that unfortunately this is going to be like seasonal stuff. I kind of wish it wasn't like that.
I mean, I get it because it gives you pockets of feeling like you should be playing the game because you literally could miss something. But some people don't love that idea of like FOMO in a game, right? But if you're doing a game as a service, I don't really know how you do it adequately without making it to where people do feel a need to come to it, because if they don't, you do miss out on this time of the game. And you know, there's something, I'm glad I got to play this. And at first I was like, I'll probably play it, but it started hitting as soon as I was getting COVID, so I didn't know how I felt. And then when I started feeling a little bit better, I got on and played with Blaze for a little bit. And I think it's one of the cooler game modes, and goes to show how there's still a little bit of interesting ideas of things to mix and match up in the shooter genre to do something new. Even if you want to call it the danger zone. But when you play certain maps and you see how it ends up choking you down, like y'all know the desert map with vehicles that has like the 2 towers on each side, and then there's the underbridge that normally has the cloak on it, and the upper see-through bridge. The danger zone in that one, I think it may change every time, but I'm not entirely sure. But one time I was playing in there, the danger zone started to close out, and it choked the whole map down to the underbridge. It was literally just big enough for a dude to jump from the ledge to the bridge and then just fight everything out there. And there were like 3 dudes alive and just smacking each other down until suddenly there was a winner. Yeah, it was pretty fun. And then lastly, because at first I was kind of getting tired of Halo because they fixed the big team battle issue, right? Or they claimed to. They put out a hot fix that was supposed to fix big team battle matchmaking issues. Well, guess what?
It ain't fixed.
And instead, it seems to have spread to other game modes because multiple times there's like packet loss issues on certain game modes, not just rampant, but it's there. And certain game modes are starting to do the same thing where it'll pretend like you're starting to match make, and then it'll say, we can't connect, and then can't connect. And you'll get cut in this loop where you can't get out without like exiting the game or crashing the game. There's that. And then I don't know if this was on purpose, if this was like done shadowly behind, to try and do something, or if it was an impact of this hotfix. I don't know how it would be. But the assault rifle feels like it's been rebalanced, which is weird because I didn't think the assault rifle was really OP by any standard. But I have full on emptied full clips into people. And you're either dealing with 2 things. You're either dealing with the fact that this hotfix has made server latency such an issue that on your screen you're hitting every single time, but on their screen you're not. Or they've adjusted how the auto rifle works. And if they actually have adjusted the auto rifle's damage, it's like relearning the whole game. But it's still unclear to me how that actually goes because there's still a lot of server issues that are happening as a result of the hotfix. So it's a weird time to be playing Halo, but it still has its moments of glory and fun. But I got tired of that, so I went and played RuneScape. And I had a great time. Dude, I haven't played RuneScape on my new computer using the thing. I'm normally playing on my phone or like, wherever I can easily get to it. I haven't been playing it much lately, but I play every now and then. But I got on my computer finally and downloaded this RuneLite thing and the HD texture mod pack that someone put out. And they've been updating that. So I saw the other day that there was extreme settings for everything, and I was like, let's see what this bad boy looks. I have everything maxed out, and it looks so interesting because it's like a really smooth, clean looking game now, and I have extreme shadow quality and extreme draw distance, and it's so weird seeing a game from like 2003 look like this but still also look like a game from 2003. It looks like somebody it's exactly what it is. It looks like someone just remastered a game but just like, yeah, we're going to do everything we can. And it's pretty cool. The guy's going through and putting like, there's a winter theme, so you can click it and all the ground will be covered in snow and stuff. So I've had a good time. I did Legends Quest for anybody who's a big RuneScape fan. I never actually did Legends Quest all the way through on my original character. So whenever Old School popped up and you had to restart anyway, I was like, I'm going to start trying to knock out some quests. It goes back to showing how I've kind of talked about, there's just something about this game's use of like point and click games, kind of like what we did with like Day of the Tentacle, Chris, when you went through that, I know. But there's like that weird thinking to where if you don't follow a guide, the game is just really fun to let your mind think of how you might fix a problem. So like one problem in the thing is there's a little babbling brook and there's rocks all in it. And you can't fit this bowl that you have to make. You have to make a gold bowl so that the water retains its blessing. And you can't, the bowl's too big to fit in there. And so you're just sitting there, you're like, what do I do? And you have to have machetes in order to cut down, trees and stuff to get through the desert, or the jungle rather. And right beside the babbling brook, there's little cattails. Or whatever they're called. They're little hollow stem things. Anyway, you just see them. You can't enter. You can search them and they give you a description, but you actually have to think about it and use your knife on the little reed and then use the reed on the bowl to fill the bowl up from the babbling brook. And it's just a fun way to be like, oh yeah, most games beat you over the head with now cut the reed. Use the reed in the babbling brook. And it's nice that the game kind of just throws you in and says, do it. Now you can look at guides for all this, but kind of ruins fun. So, but I had a good time with that. Might accidentally be getting myself into a RuneScape fold, and if so, I'm going to end up like Chris and playing less Destiny, more RuneScape. Probably not though. I'm trying to control myself. Anyway, get this show kind of moving on. We are going to talk a little bit about some catch up on the news before we get into the obvious big thing, like we talked about with the Activision Blizzard King buyout from Microsoft. But the first thing on the news, you know what? Hold on. Let me back up real quick. Before we go into the news, we always take a second to thank you guys who listen to the show and remind you that if you want to interact with us, usually there is a communities take section, but in my brain fog, I completely forgot to post anything of it. Until this morning when I realized, hey, I guess I'm going to record. I'm feeling okay. And didn't have it. So if you want to do that, you can go over to Twitter at Triangle SQRD and find us there. You can find us on Facebook in the group Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. Ask to be entered into there. We will gladly accept you. And then there is always, of course, a Discord, which is linked in the description below. We've had a lot of people join recently, like Stingray X and Lord Corgi. Thank you guys for coming in and communicating with us. It's fun. Sorry, I've been a little out of it lately. Just doing what I can to check in and tell you guys I'm doing better, but I'll be back on there pretty soon since I'm feeling quite a bit better. But anyway, the first thing up, PlayStation has come back around with its yearly wrap up for those who like to see their in-game, their previous year of gaming. The wrap up will be available now through February 20th and will let users see their most played games, how many trophies they've earned, total hours played this year, and more, while offering all who access it a code to download 4 free avatars, which seems to be the new yearly thing. The easiest way to access it is to head over to the PS blog and click through the article to find the direct link. Now, sadly, I can't give y'all any insight here. I would have loved to. I really intended to. I can't get mine to load. Been trying all week. Saul's in the same boat. So Chris,
I tried mine right before the show.
Yes, mine works.
Take it away. I tried mine too, but I don't know what to do.
All right, I guess I'll just read the whole thing. I played for 1,911 hours last year. Most of that was on PS4 titles. Let's see. I played 185 games last year. That's neat. So my top 5 games were Apex Legends at 310 hours, MLB The Show at 195, Mass Effect Legendary at 102, Death Stranding at 81, and Hades at 80.
Oh, God, yeah.
I earned 1,710 new trophies, 33 platinums, 231 gold, 318 silver, 1,128 bronze.
Now, back up, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Because I noticed this. You said this the other day. How many trophies did you earn last year? Was it 32? I mean, platinums.
No, 30, I think.
30. And I got 32, I think. I was able to sneak those 2 past you.
I'm still mad about it, but yeah.
I know you are, but that's just called strategery.
I can't even be mad.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty genius play on my book. I gotta say, I knew exactly what I was doing
because I was so far ahead, and then
you were so far ahead of me. Yes,
played a bunch of baby games and won.
That's not exactly what happened, but okay, all right. No, I'm proud of you for earning more this year because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't earn hardly. I mean, I know I earned platinum this year. I don't know how many. If I had to guess, I'd say I maybe earned 10 to 12.
Yeah.
I didn't care that much this year. I think after last year, my brain was just like, bro, whatever. And all the games I wanted the platinum, like Nier, I was mentioning on there, all these years later, and a joke that I know doesn't land anywhere for you because you weren't listening to the show yet, and you definitely weren't part of it. But I'm known around these parts as no Nier Plat Beck or Brett. And the reason being is because I always talk about how much I love the original Nier, but I didn't have the platinum because the game is a pain in the butt's platinum.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, with Replicant, I got to where I'm at the last trophy upgrading all the weapons, and you just have to grind for these materials that I just don't care. It's so boring, and I love the game. And even the new version's a little more fun to play with more refined combat, but it's still just like, I don't feel like doing that. And so that's one of them. And there's just a couple, you know, Destiny still eludes me, and here I am trying to get that platinum once again.
It'll happen for both of us, I think.
We got exactly a month. No, we have a month. We have less than a month right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get up at least 20 light levels. No, hold on. We got to get 1245, right?
Yeah, 1245. I need 10 levels.
Oh.
I got to be honest, once Dying Light 2 comes out, I'm going to be spending 500 hours with that game, apparently. So I don't know if I have the time.
500 hours is too long, Chris.
Wrong.
What a weird PR nightmare that ended up becoming.
It was ridiculous and overblown by everyone.
I think so too. Mainly because if you read that and it wasn't clear that like the game doesn't require you to play for 500 hours to just beat it.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I was a little surprised that I earned more platinums this year because I felt like I hadn't earned very many at all. But
you were front heavy this year. You did a lot at the beginning, and then you've just kind of consistently had at least 1 to 2 a month.
Yeah,
and I really haven't. I think that's the thing for me. I was a little. I took a big break at first, then I came back a little strong, and then it just kind of waned off.
Yeah. When are we doing another?
Saul, did you get a single platinum at all this year? I know you don't normally go for platinum, so I know every now and then it just happens for you.
No, I think, let me see. Well, I was going to say my PlayStation's
Well, if the PlayStation wrap-up would show, we'd all know.
Where's my PlayStation controller? My PlayStation's on, but Netflix is just kind of auto-playing in the background. I don't know where my controller went. I was going to say I could check. I'll just check on my phone. I don't think I did. I think the last platinum I got was coincidentally Destiny.
Fuck you.
No, it couldn't have been Destiny. That was way too long ago.
I think you've gotten at least one since then, but I don't think it'd be much more than one. Chris, I think I told you he got the one in Destiny 2 the day I think it was the day before they patched out the ability to get it with the Prestige Nightfall that they had at launch. I went on to do it the next day.
It was way before that.
Oh, you had it before? I know me and you were trying, and then you randomly got on and did it with Joe or something. I can't remember who you did it with.
No, it was, I don't remember how I did it with either, but I think it was Joe Gavin. Because it was back on PlayStation 4.
Bummed. Yeah, this was back when all you had to do was Prestige Nightfall before they patched them out of the game. Never to return until suddenly they thought, hey, let's Grandmaster Nightfalls.
Let's make it harder.
Harder than any raid level requirement in the game. But that is what it is. It's unfortunate that this isn't working for everybody because I would have liked to have seen mine. It's something that's nice to kind of get a feel, though I have heard from a few people, including in the Discord and just general general chat amongst Twitter and the Twitter sphere, that it's kind of been accurate, definitely with things like online time.
Yeah.
One of the people in our Discord was like, it says I've been online for 0 hours, but it also says I played Final Fantasy 14 online for like 400 hours, which how do those two things line up?
It did that to me last year where it said I spent 500 hours in Dark Souls 3 and like 1,100 hours in Final Fantasy 14, but it said total time spent online was 700 hours. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, two completely online games.
I think by technicality, the funny part about this is that so I do have Destiny 2's Platinum, but I have it twice because of the way it works on one of PS5.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But I think
Your irony is that it was Destiny. Yeah.
I think Hellblade was my last one, actually.
Nice. I got to do Hellblade.
I saw you downloaded it.
I did download it, yes.
Yeah. Be interesting to see. Have you played Hellblade at all, Chris?
Yeah, I started it. I liked it. I just don't really like sitting with headphones and playing games. So there was not a selling point for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's weird because it's one of the only games that I would actually like really die on the hill that you should play with headphones. Like, you don't have to. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, but it's a game that I think weirdly enough does actually make it better to play with headphones. And normally if I can avoid putting headphones on to play anything, I will. I don't want to. That's why it's been so weird at this weird social gaming stint that I've been on. I've been playing games with headphones almost exclusively.
Did the PS5 patch come out for Apex? Speaking of social games?
Not
no.
Yet.
Okay.
It'll come out with the next season probably.
When will that be?
So it's soon.
I think this season ends in like 19 days.
So the new season for Apex comes out roughly around the same time as the new season for Destiny and Elden Ring. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Real competitive month.
I can't wait to completely drop Apex on PS5 and play it on.
Yeah. Saul's like, no competition. Elden Ring.
And then some Destiny to take a break from Elden Ring. That's how it's going to go.
I honestly might play Elden Ring only because I want this year to be a bunch of really difficult platinums in my arsenal. So that might be one that I just throw in. Because I'm debating going back to like Sekiro and that kind of stuff. So,
you know, I've thought about it because I'm not that. I memean, I ran like in like 2 hours. I got like half the trophies in the game. But I thought about going back to Mortal Shell and getting PS5 plat for Mortal Shell.
Do it.
Wow, dude, I've been heavily thinking about it, but it's just one of those things too where I'm like, do I really want to go through the stress of the no shell run? There's just something about that's just.
It's like doing the no roll run in Titan Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. Like, that's really hard.
Shout out Blake is finishing Stardew Valley, which is one that's eluded me forever. So I might go back to that because I can't let him get it and not get it myself.
I thought about downloading that on my Vita and just playing it on Vita because the other side to Vita is I don't think that that version's been updated, so it's probably way easier to get the platinum.
Yeah, but then you still have the hard Prairie King stuff, so it's harder now, or back then.
Why did they get rid of that in the newer
Apparently,
games?
According to Blake, you can save scum it a little bit. So,
that's unfortunate.
Yes, it is.
That's always weird to me is when you make a trophy list and you make it just vague enough that it continues to get harder and harder. Like that sucked about Terraria. It's like collect all pets. Okay, there's 7 pets in the first version of the game, and then if you play Terraria now, it's like there's 87 pets. That seems unfair.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous.
Like No Man's Sky is the same way. You can get the platinum for No Man's Sky, and if you have the disc for No Man's Sky, you get the platinum for No Man's Sky in like 20 hours. If you have the updated version of this game, you're done. You're just done.
It ain't happening. I came close at launch, and I never did it. But whatever.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. You know.
No man's platinum.
All right, moving on from that. The rest is kind of just housekeeping for anybody who has, who hadn't been keeping their ear to the ground. Kingdom Hearts fans are in for a mini concert, chat, and Q&A with the development team, and quote, much more, as part of the series' 20th anniversary event, which is kicking off April 10th in Tokyo. Whether we get teased for the next entry is really the big mystery here, but a video of the event will be posted at a later date, according to the series' Twitter, which makes me think that there's probably not a reveal unless the reveal is something that they do and then go ahead and announce and release worldwide, and then the actual event with the concert and everything gets released as its own little event video that you can watch for people who just really want to go that extra mile. I don't know. It's been 4 years or 3 years. It was Kingdom Hearts 2018. I feel like it was.
I think it was, yeah.
Let's find out. Kingdom Hearts 3. 2019. It was really early 2019. That's why it kind of felt like 2018. So let's see. January of 2019. So we're coming 3 years in right now. It's not impossible for them to start showing us, and definitely if they are doing what they're talking about and wanting to turn around and make more Kingdom Hearts quicker. We'll see. I'm really curious to see how things go after the ending of the Remind DLC, which does lead to the thing of it's unfortunate when games like Prince of Persia on Prince of Persia 2008 lean on DLC to really give you an ending that sets something up more. But I'll give Kingdom Hearts 3 this. Day one game ends the series. Fine. It ends its arc. But it's weird that you have to buy DLC just to get this extra little thing that they want to do that has big implications for the next one. But I guess that's kind of how they've always been when we used to get they'd get Final Cut over there, and then eventually we'd get Final Cut, and there's little weird story things that kind of add a lot of implications. So is what it is. There's that. Despite talk of PSVR 2 on the table recently, Sony have put out a new trailer showcasing all the VR action you can enjoy on their current PSVR in the coming months, like Moss Book 2, Zenith, the Last City, and Wanderer, while hammering home that it is compatible on PS5. And I'm glad that the little quick read down there says you still got to get that little dongle thing from them. This is like the first real big push I've seen from Sony on VR. So I don't know if they were kind of PSVR being playable on PS5. It seems like PS5 has been such the focus that you get the little PSVR nuggets during things like State of Play. That's about it. So I'm not really excited enough for any of these for them to be playing on the PSVR. So it leaves in a weird spot. But if you've got the PSVR and you still like to play it and go through the somewhat of a hassle of hooking it up, then good. You got some good games coming. Moss, the first Moss was excellent. So Book 2 will probably be very, very good. Good. The trophy for I should have the platinum for Moss, and I wonder if Matt ever got it as well. One of our other guys was trying, and the final boss, you got to not fall off the stage at all, and it's just a nightmare. Anyway, let's see. A couple more things. After a series of delays, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is finally confirmed for release date. The game will be forcing its way onto consoles on April 5th. Little pun. Another one of Sony's China Hero Projects titles is nearing release with Anno Mutationum, a 2.5D side-scrolling action game with a cyberpunk aesthetic, going gold and aiming to release soon. No date has been given yet, but as we've been talking about with how busy February is, I imagine that they are going to wait and give the title room to breathe with it being new. The last, as far as I know, the last Sony China Hero Project title that released was Fist. And Fist was good, and it seemed to do pretty well and make money. So have you guys seen this game at all?
Nuh-uh. I haven't.
Yeah. Uh-oh, Chris, I think you might be muted.
No, I have not.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. It's like it looks like everything's kind of in this, like I said, 2.5 3D thing, but then it still has like this pixelation to it, which gives it a real interesting look from a cyberpunk aesthetic. Because like the environments are kind of smooth, but it's like the characters have this like rolling pixel shutter on them a little bit, and it gives them a real interesting look. And the enemies kind of have that too, but it's all side scrollers. So I don't know, be interesting to see. The big Sony China Hero Project game that I think everyone's still waiting on is Lost Soul Aside, and it's like we got that big dump of info and big gameplay thing, and then still nothing. Also, I see that, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, Sekiro. Are you finally going to become the parry master?
Very doubtful, but I'm going to try again.
Actually, parrying in Sekiro is so much easier than Dark Souls. Or not even parrying, but whatever it is in that game maybe it is parrying, I guess.
Yeah, it's parrying. And I'd say it is easier than it is in Dark Souls, but it's more necessary than it is in Dark Souls.
Oh, it absolutely
you can play the entirety of Dark Souls without ever having to parry, and in this game, you're not going to make it if you don't parry.
Yeah, you have to parry.
Yeah, it's a hard retraining of yourself if you've been diehard Dark Souls and Bloodborne, where you don't have to worry about those things so much. Though I think Bloodborne gives quite a reason to want to parry people, or to at least want to do the stagger attacks.
Shoot him in the head.
Dude, you can mess up Father Gaswan if you can just get his rhythm right and keep doing those big, the claw attacks to him in Bloodborne. Yeah, that's a good way to play through that game. All right, let's see. Last thing up on the news before we talk about the big thing is PlayStation has highlighted a selection of games coming this year to be excited for. And among the 22 for 22 are expected games such as Elden Ring, Horizon, Dying Light 2, Gran Turismo 7, you name it. It's this year, it's on there. But also what was curious is God of War Ragnarok. Whether this would truly act as like a confirmation for the game to be either internally projected this year or, more importantly, if it actually releases this year, remains to be seen, but it's an interesting find and does give room for potential hope for fans who are wanting to play sooner rather than later. I think whenever the kind of delay happened from 21 to 22 and then that statement from Chris Judge, I think a lot of people started thinking, well, we're not going to play this till 23. I don't think there was any real reason in that given, but I think everybody's just so brought up and disillusioned with the way game development and delays are happening with COVID that it was safer to just be like, let's just assume it's 2023 and be excited if it's any earlier.
Yeah.
So it's weird. I mean, I think it might be a good time because I think if they kind of lean into this year where God of War PC is doing really well, they might manage to get some people to be excited and try and jump on the PS5 or PS4 version of Ragnarok. Though I have to say it'd be kind of hard for someone to get excited and jump onto PS4 Ragnarok because I have a feeling that I might be wrong, but I have a feeling PC God of War probably looks better than God of War Ragnarok will look like on PS4, if I'm just being honest. So, I mean, if nothing else, from a sheer resolution standpoint, but things like draw distance and LOD pop in, I think those are things that if you started playing on computer, it's going to be hard to want to move back to. But yeah, we'll see. All right, that's all of that. I guess the big thing now to talk about is, of course, the $68.7 billion transaction that is aspiring between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King for all of their seminal IP that everyone knows, like King's Quest, Hexen, Gun, classic, Guitar Hero. That's where this money's going, buddy. That's where it's going. People are in here for the DJ Hero. DJ Hero will be the next big Xbox Game Pass game. I just want y'all to know. We have Caesar. Candy Crush will probably be making its way to console soon. Blur. I actually want to stop for a second. Blur is a pretty cool game. I don't know if you ever played it. It was a PS3 racing game.
Blur rocks.
There was a lot of... Yeah, dude, Split Second was also awesome from Disney. There was a lot of really cool PS3 racing games.
Split Second was the one where you were like making a movie and you could do like press A and the bridge will collapse as you're running through it kind of thing, right?
Yeah, if I remember right. If not, we're both remembering that thing wrong.
I mean, if it's not Split Second, it's Blur. So
hold on. Split Second game. I think Split Second might have been the one where... Yeah, no, we're right. Yeah, it's set within a reality TV show. And you could do all that, and then you had to use your little things. Again, PS3 had a ton of good racing games. Unfortunately, I don't feel like there's nearly as many racers now.
Not good ones.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's still plenty of them coming out. I really still need to play, because I've still heard good things. I need to play Hot Wheels.
I know I want to play it too.
Yeah.
Feel free to pick it up.
I guess I'm just going to yeah, sure.
Thanks, bud.
Let me get on that. Wait, from what I understand, you got points out your wahoo. To be fair, I have significantly more points than what you sent me, so that's not really a fair.
I do, and I spent them all on Dying Light Deluxe Edition.
Oh, rough times. But you know what? I'm happy for you.
Me too. I'm very excited.
All right. So looking at this on a more realistic thing, we're going to talk about it at large, but I guess real quick, for anybody who's been living under a rock, which I think is very unlikely, I want to get two things out of the way. I'm aware that this is probably something you've heard people talk about ad nauseum, and there is a high chance that us talking about this is going to be something that some of you are just don't want to hear because we're too late to the game. And I appreciate that and understand that. And if you want to turn it off and go on and do your own thing, that's great. If you want to hear our thoughts on it, happy to give them to you. It's, we're just in a position where, to be honest, we didn't even have the internal discussion about this because it happened. There was enough COVID stuff kind of reeling around us and enough work stuff, and we all have real jobs that we have to stay with and don't get to do this full time. So there was not really even an internal discussion about doing an impromptu episode about this, and nor do I think any of us really felt the need to do so. There's enough talk about it. Now, we did hear a few of you say we're excited to hear what you guys have to say on this and hear y'all's perspective. So that's what we're doing. So for those of you who stick around, great. What happened, of course, as everybody should know at this point, Microsoft announced on the 18th of January that they are moving to acquire Activision Blizzard, like we said, for $68.7 billion, making this the biggest purchase in gaming history. Of the industry, of the business, the business industry, whatever, the history of the business. Sorry, still a little brain dead here.
A
little COVID-y. Got that sickness. So there's a couple interesting things here that I'll kind of read because I think it's pretty interesting. Microsoft will acquire Activision Blizzard for $95 per share in an all-cash transaction valued at $68.7 billion, inclusive of Activision Blizzard's net cash. When the transaction closes, Microsoft will become the world's third largest gaming company by revenue, behind Tencent and Sony. So that's pretty interesting. Sony, king of the crop. I'm really surprised by this, that Tencent is not over Sony, just because of how many hands they have in the ditch, as I'm going to call it. But it is very interesting that even with such a big pull together, with a company like Activision, who we know is a big revenue earner for gaming, that with Microsoft and them and Bethesda's money and everything rolled in with all this new Microsoft, they are still coming in third. You thought they would have just hopped over someone in here, which, I mean, they clearly hopped over people, but it's very interesting to see how that goes off. Of course, there's plenty of IP that come along with this, like Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, Call of Duty, Candy Crush, all of those things. And, of course, affords them nearly 10,000 employees, though there is fear of layoffs once this does end. So we'll see. I think that's probably a good place to stop and kind of check in with you guys when this happened, because I know it happened really out of the blue, so it's not like anybody was prepared for it or, really thinking and talking around. Saul, what was your immediate reaction when you saw it?
I wasn't shocked like I was with Bethesda. I think Bethesda shocked everybody.
Yeah.
I think because, of of how shocking that was, that I didn't really care about this one that much, mainly because nothing from Activision or Blizzard or anything really strikes me. I guess technically I have an Xbox, so it doesn't affect me anyways. But at the same time, it's, the first thing I saw was people saying, oh, well, this is a monopoly and stuff like that. And, I definitely disagreed to that. As we just heard with the way that the revenue is done, is that they're still behind Sony. I was more kind of shocked, or more just kind of surprised, that as I thought about it, what IPs were now on, like, officially Xbox IPs, like Crash Bandicoot or like Spyro. That kind of blew my mind. But other than that, the actual news of the acquisition wasn't really surprising to me. I guess surprising is a bad word, because I think it is a surprise. Nobody did expect this, but I think it wasn't as shocking to me. as the Bethesda announcement was. And yeah, it's just one of those things that's like, yeah, like I play Call of Duty when Call of Duty games are good. And I've played Overwatch and I played Diablo. And, you know, I can hope that Microsoft cleans out the scummy company that's Activision, but or parts of the company that are scummy. But other than that, yeah, I was more so just kind of shocked at the IPs that were now Microsoft's when you really thought about it.
Kind of the aftermath.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of get where you're coming. So you're saying that and of course you can correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're saying that the weird nature of buying a publisher wholesale like they did with Zenimax and then therefore getting Bethesda. Do you think that being the first action kind of set the thing where that gave you that, oh God, it's like somebody bought an entire publisher and then so it just didn't have the same impact this time around? Or is it strictly because of your relationship with each one of those companies? Like you had more interest in the Bethesda games and ZeniMax games than you necessarily do the Activision games for it to feel like anything. And like you said, you have an Xbox, so there's no loss more so than maybe it's a loss on where you might prefer to play them. But I think I kind of agree with you in the sense of like, but the Bethesda thing had this hit of like, I've never heard of a game hardware manufacturer buying out an entire publisher. And very rarely does a publisher of that size get bought out by anyone. So when you look at something like ZeniMax, that was already shocking. And Activision still has the shock, I think, comes from the value of the deal. And then, like you said, the turnaround surprise shock of like, oh, there's a lot of IP that people don't think about because Activision hasn't cared about for a long time that they're going to get as a part of this. Like, what is the real chances that we could get, a new Guitar Hero? What are the new chances that someone cares about making Crash Bandicoot again after 4 was pretty beloved?
Yeah.
What are the chances that someone wants to come back and put Raven off of Call of Duty and be like, did you guys like making Singularity? Let's make a spiritual successor to Singularity or something like that. That was kind of like the big interesting thing. So Chris, I'm going to ask you the same thing. I mean, what was your kind of point blank reaction on a personal level, kind of like Saul was? And then we'll kind of talk about more of the business level because there are potentially big business ramifications here. But I'm kind of looking more for your personal feel.
I don't know. I think it was one of those things where I just went, oh, okay. Because
pretty much the same.
We were all, I think everyone was expecting Microsoft to keep doing this. And I think this was probably the least annoying company they could have bought for me in my life. Had they bought Sega and then Persona 6 is Xbox exclusive, I would have been pissed. Or Ubisoft or EA and then Titanfall gets Master Chief skins or whatever. Not Titanfall, but Apex. Those would have all affected me more. This was kind of like, yeah, I guess I'll continue to play Call of Duty on PC. You know what I mean? Like, there was really not too much for me here. I think this, like I said, for me, this was more of like the future of the industry stuff and made me feel a lot better about my prediction of Game Pass on PS5. So...
yeah, and I knew as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know Chris sees this as a feather in the cap to his thing. And I've never completely disagreed with you, as we've talked for a lot. I think a lot of people had this idea that the real move behind Game Pass is to eventually permeate into everything that it can. Mm-hmm. It just seems like such low-hanging fruit and obvious moves to make that I don't think anybody's surprised by that. So kind of moving off of that, God, just going to keep playing Call of Duty on PC. There's a couple of interesting things that have been stacked on top of this conversation. And one of them, as Saul kind of said, is the shouting around of this being a monopoly. And I kind of want to get everybody's feel on that because I've seen a lot of people run with this. And I think that the thing that's getting lost here, at least as far as I kind of see it and how I feel about it, is that people don't have a strong grasp on what a monopoly truly is. And I think that they're throwing the word around. And when they see people say it's not a monopoly, in the real sense of the word. They think that they're being discounted and people are acting like this isn't still potentially a bad thing. And the reality is that consolidation at this level doesn't have to make something a monopoly so much as it's still, rather, let me back up. It doesn't have to make it a monopoly, but that doesn't mean it isn't an inherently bad thing, or it can't end up being an inherently bad thing. And I think more people, even people who aren't agreeing that it's a monopoly, are still erring on the side of this being a potentially rough thing for the industry. Do you think that's pretty fair for your guys' take on that, or do y'all kind of feel differently?
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah, you know, I think that when you shout monopoly, I think that that's when there's a real threat that another company could potentially end because of the ramifications of why you're shouting monopoly. Or at least go and have such a hard time fiscally that they would have to start making emergency maneuvers that could then danger the company. Not competitious moves so that they're, you know, competing with this buy. Because that's inevitably what's going to happen. They're going to compete with this buy in some form or fashion, or this news. It's kind of similar to how, what did Phil Spencer say about PS Now?
The inevitability, that he was talking about Spartacus, and he said that moving toward a service like this is an inevitability. And I think he even went on to say that he thinks it's an inevitability that they'll eventually go day one with their games to remain competitive.
Never.
But I can't remember if he actually said that.
No, he did. But that's not
much like Chris. I don't know if I want to say never, but I don't see it happening for a long time.
No, but that's not even then though. Even the speculation of that, him just saying that is putting the ball in Sony's court of like, wow. So now Phil Spencer's having, you know, he's being curious and having these kind of curious expectations of, are they going to make same games day in, day out, day one? And then so he's planting a seed of that question, and people are now Sony, and so it's the ball's in Sony's court to answer that question. It's the same as this buyout. They did this buyout, so now this may be great for them. This may not be great for them, but it's posing the question of like, well, what's Sony going to do now? It may not even be about what the actual result is for them. It's more of like, what are they going to do? And then, like we've talked about before, this kind of thought process, this kind of purchase breeds competition. It does not breed a monopoly. You know, was Call of Duty day one like special content on PlayStation a monopoly? No,
of course not.
Yeah, we're gonna see the same kind of deals that we saw that Sony's had before with Destiny and Call of Duty, and wasn't it Crash Bandicoot at 1.2? Coincidentally,
for Sony.
Yeah, didn't they have some kind of special deal with them for Crash 4, or was it
the Crash trilogy was a 1 year?
Yeah, so it's like this is what like
timed exclusive
that benefited them, sure, but it didn't cause any kind of detrimental blow to Microsoft. This is how this buyout's going to be. This is how Bethesda's buyout's going to be, because the people who purchase Sony games and Sony consoles, they may play Call of Duty or Crash games or Spyro games supplementally, like as supplements to like their normal gaming stuff, but that's not going to take away the first party Sony games that they bought the console for.
So, Chris, I heard you. It seems like you might have had a somewhat differing opinion on something you said.
Well, I think not even to do a saw. I think we're going to talk about monopoly. We should probably define it, and it's the exclusive.
That's fair.
The exclusive possession or control of the supply of or trade in a commodity or service. So I would argue that this is not the same as an exclusive, and this is significantly closer to a monopoly than we've ever seen, than Bethesda was.
I agree with that. I agree that this is the closest move toward a monopoly. I agree with that.
Not even to disagree with Saul, but if Microsoft does take Call of Duty exclusive, that removes the biggest seller on their console year after year over year, which means they lose how many billions of dollars? So that is a detrimental blow to Sony that could, in a crazy future, kill their company. right?
Well,
Not
Or
that it will. I'm not saying
a
it
step
will.
toward, right? It's a stab wound that how many stab wounds can they continue to actually inflict to Sony, and how many of them actually go through, and how many of them bounce off. And there's plenty of things that I noticed that we keep having this conversation, and it's going to everyone is of how does Sony respond, right? I think Saul, you were kind of getting at the fact that as a result of this, and what everyone thinks here, and everyone might be right and everyone might be wrong with what Sony chooses to do, but everyone kind of thinks that this puts pressure on Sony to copy or continue to reap the losses,
or just to make a move.
Microsoft going through. Yeah, right. Like the idea is to push Sony into making some kind of a move. Now, what do you think that really is, and how much PR speak is labeled into some of these things? Because, there's a tweet real quick that I want to read because Chris was talking about Call of Duty, and I think it's really an odd timing, and I put it in here because I wanted to be able to call it back. So a few days after this happened, and there was a remark from Sony's upper management that they didn't think Call of Duty was going to go multi-platform, and that they didn't feel like the Activision games they have agreements with, and contractual agreements with rather, were going to go exclusive. And Twitter, Phil Spencer took to Twitter and he said, "Had good calls this week with leaders at Sony. I confirmed our intent to honor all existing agreements upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard." And that's important to remember here, is that this isn't done for probably at least another year, much like we saw with Bethesda. But continuing, upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation, Sony is an important part of our industry, and we value our relationship. So a couple of things about this. The wording on this is so vague, and just enough of a thing of where some people are like, well, why would he say anything if he doesn't mean that he wants to keep the games on PlayStation? Well, it says our desire. Desire doesn't mean what you actually do. That's one thing. He
desires to have Game Pass on PlayStation.
Exactly. And there's no talk about what keeping Call of Duty on PlayStation will require from PlayStation. There's no telling. Maybe it'll only stay on PlayStation. Maybe this is their way they strong arm Xbox Live onto PlayStation, right? Because if I'm not, you can tell me right now, and I could be wrong because I haven't played Minecraft in a long time. When you play Minecraft on PlayStation now, do you have to log into an Xbox Live account?
I have no idea.
I have no idea either.
I don't think you do.
I
played the entirety. Yeah, I played the entirety of Minecraft, which this isn't necessarily the same thing, but I played the entirety of Minecraft Dungeons on PlayStation 4, and I don't remember logging into Xbox Live at all. So that was one of the things as to why why PlayStation was very hesitant about doing all this cross-play stuff and cross-promotion and certain things, is that they didn't want Xbox Live or any other service realistically running on top of theirs and kind of potentially getting in the way of theirs. I think they wanted full control over their online system. And considering what happened to them with the hacks, I don't blame them for being very close to the chest. Not that that's necessarily the reason, but I think that their ideology around what happens on their network is very different as a result of the hack of 2011. So with that said, though, that tweet from Phil is interesting because it does kind of reek of like it's just loose enough. I don't really understand why he needed to come out and say it, because people can look at it and go, well, yeah, he can't say anything too damning or too hit right now because the sale hasn't gone through. And if the sale doesn't go through, you don't want people having expectations built off of something that Phil said. But at the same time, why say anything? Why not just continue to say, we bought the company. Once the company is in our hands and we have control over these things, we will have discussions with the people who it matters and how it's going to impact the business moving forward, and leave it at that. So it does seem like there's some, I don't want to say strong arming, but it does seem like there's some nudging at the very least on Microsoft's part that they're hinting at something. But where I was kind of getting at a second ago too, and looking at what Sony can do, right? There's multiple moves, and everyone's immediate move that they think that they want to go to, many of them we probably haven't even thought of, is this idea of, okay, well, that means Sony's going to have to buy Square. Sony's going to have to buy From Software. Sony's going to have to buy this and buy that. And it's really interesting seeing people's breadth of choices, because some of them, it goes to show how much certain people like certain things. If you really had to look, like Chris, if you had to think, what do you think is a viable solution that you think is decently possible that Sony may go through as a response to this? Or do you think Sony's response is the non-response we got with Bethesda? Let me back up. I don't want to say non-response, because Sony, since Bethesda and Zenimax buyout, has bought Firesprite, Bluepoint, Housemarque, plenty of things. I don't want to act like they've done nothing, but they didn't do anything
Deviation
on the level.
Games, Haven.
Nobody thought, whenever Bethesda happened, everyone thought that was the, now Sony has to turn around and buy Square, and that didn't happen. So that's kind of more of what I mean. So what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think Sony responds, and what is their response if you had to guess?
I'm sure they will, because this is a big pressure move for them. But I also don't think that buying Square Enix is a good move. Like, what are you getting from Square Enix other than Final Fantasy, realistically? Tomb Raider, which is dead. They don't have Hitman anymore. Like, you're getting a bunch of IP, sure, but are you getting teams anywhere close to as valuable as what you got with, as what Microsoft got with Activision? You're getting, all you're doing when you're buying Square is getting Final Fantasy exclusive. And I'm sure I'm missing some. Please don't come at me and tell me what I'm missing, because I know I am. But I can't think of anything that Square is doing that is anywhere close to matching this. And then the thing when you're like, Sony should buy Square. Sony's already has a Final Fantasy exclusive.
Not only that, they already have market majority in Final Fantasy. So like buying Square is not really going to do anything.
Right. But even if the goal was like, we're gonna screw Microsoft, so we're just taking Final Fantasy away. They already did. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 remake is very clearly exclusive to PlayStation, right? They clearly reworked that contract so it doesn't come to Microsoft. So what's the point of buying Square? You know, you could make an argument for Sega, because then you can be like, okay, well, Microsoft can't come in here and force their way into Persona exclusivity, so we took that. But why wouldn't you just go, hey, Sega, here's $10 billion, give us Persona team? You know, why wouldn't you go to Warner Brothers and say, we want Rocksteady and NetherRealm? Why are you buying publishers? This is why I don't understand why Microsoft bought publishers. So you have all this IP now, and you have Treyarch, Raven, Infinity Ward, and High Noon and Beanox. What? Why did you spend this money for all this? Like, they got, like, to me, the Activision deal is extraordinarily top heavy, and people are looking at all the stuff they could do. And I'll tell you right now, my bold prediction: they do nothing. They continue to pump out Call of Duty. That's what they're going to do. Because why would they do anything else? They'll probably have Toys for Bob do Spyro and Crash. That makes a ton of sense, you know. But at the same token, why couldn't Sony go to Microsoft and be like, listen, Spyro and Crash are legacy characters for us. We want to buy them from you. Why couldn't they do that? Is there, you know, because I think I tweeted, I don't know if I tweeted this or I said it to you guys in Discord. There has to be a certain point where, I said it in our Discord, in the description if you want to join that. But I said where at this point, Microsoft has too many games to do anything with all of these games. So at what point are they just like, you know what, you can have Call of Duty, because making it exclusive just, it shortens the player base even more, but it distracts from the other stuff we're doing. So yeah, you might as well keep Call of Duty. You might as well keep Overwatch, because all we're doing is destroying our player bases. And then all the other games we're putting out, like the next Spyro or the next Crash or the next Hexen or the next Gabriel Fuentes or whatever that game was. All of those games are being distracted from because of Call of Duty. Does that make sense?
I mean, I get what you're saying. I think, for me personally, and I am curious to see what Saul thinks here, I do think that Call of Duty has been in a weird slump lately.
I agree.
And I think if there's ever been a time for them to look and actually go, hey, with the position that we are in coming under Xbox, and again, that doesn't mean we see this until the Xbox acquisition is actually complete. I think that there might be a move to do exactly what happened with Assassin's Creed when it got too big for its own pants and started kind of failing. I think it might be time to look at doing a once every 2 year Call of Duty with a 4-year development cycle across 2 developers. Makes it easier, gives more time to actually read the market, see what the market wants, adjust to certain things in the market. It lets them free off other teams so that you don't have to have a 3-year dev cycle pulled off by trying to pump up with extra teams like Raven and High Moon and Toys for Bob and all these teams that you've just rallied behind being Call of Duty support studios. Now, some of those have to stay because Call of Duty is a machine that has to still be pumping because it just makes so much money, and the expectation is there with casual gamers. So I agree with you in the fact that Call of Duty stays multi-platform. It makes no sense. I think that we saw when they bought Minecraft and they saw that Minecraft would be the dumbest game in the world to suddenly make exclusive, and it would have been. That they didn't because they're smart, and they've had opportunities since then, and they still release things like Minecraft Dungeons on PlayStation because the Minecraft name is too big to confine into one thing. When there's money to be made, hand over fist and PR to be spun in a completely positive way. If you keep going, hey, you remember when we bought this and you were so scared? Look at what we did. We left it multi-platform while we rake in your tons and tons of cash that you don't even have to buy an Xbox for. So in that regard, there's that. But I do think that there is a chance, given what's going on, that Microsoft does allow some of these teams to do different stuff. Now, I do think that the business will go largely unchanged. But as you said, the thing I think you key in on here is teams. And I think what Microsoft's doing in their game they're playing, you can ask, why buy Activision when they have all these teams, but most of them are just on Call of Duty? And then, of course, you get Blizzard. And Blizzard has a fair amount of active development teams, so that's fair. I think what the real goal here, right, is what they're paying for is this Game Pass splurge to where suddenly all of these IPs and all of their games can be on Game Pass where people can play them. And let alone now you can say, well, instead of Game Pass having 300 games, Game Pass now, as a result of this merger, has 400, 500 games you can play right now, and then Call of Duty day one and this day one. I think that's their big move. And then having teams to hopefully, if needed, be able to use some of this IP as they see fit, rotate through them, and hopefully deal with fatigue. Saul, before I start talking about the Square Enix of his side of things, because I do think there's some interesting stuff there. I mean, how do you feel like the breakdown of teams and development from the Call of Duty side of things are actually going to be handled? I think I asked him at a bad time. I think
my mic stand's being dumb.
But yeah, whenever you get that fixed, we'll kind of do that. So real quick, I guess, Chris, I'm curious your thoughts on it because you said it. So one of the things that you said was, and correct me if I'm wrong, is what does Microsoft or what does Sony get from buying Square?
Right.
And then you said now they could go after Sega just to stop Microsoft from coming in and getting something like Persona or whatever it be to be de facto exclusive by buying Sega. So in your mind, why is it that they could go buy Sega? Just so I'm kind of wrapping up how you're feeling about this, right? Why is it that you think that Sony could go after buying Sega so that Sega can't be bought by Microsoft, but you don't necessarily think the same fate could come? Because reality is, if they've got the money to do this and they've got the money to potentially strong arm themselves into a Sega purchase, if Sega says yes, to get that exclusivity, then what is to say that they couldn't go, hey, you know what? Square Enix, we're going to go ahead and buy you outright so that we can get a lot of these Japanese games we've been losing to Sony after your contractual agreements are out, and we get some teams. What do you think makes those two different in your mind?
Nothing. I just prefer Persona.
So it's just for you. It's just which one's the bigger loss.
Yes, exactly. I don't care about Final Fantasy, but I care about Persona. So that was me just giving an example off my own personal bias. I don't think they should buy either. Like I said, I think they should go targeted. Okay, you want Microsoft might be going after Sega. Hey, Sega, why don't you sell us Atlas and Persona Team first? Something like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think they should.
I get where you're coming from. Curate with developers that fit like your style and what PlayStation has kind of built up as their in-house feel.
Because that's what I'm saying. Like, why would you buy, WB when you could not the company but the games division, right? When you could just go, hey, give us NetherRealm and Rocksteady, keep whatever else you want to sell. Sell Microsoft Traveler's Tales. We don't care about that, but we want to make our own exclusive fighting game with NetherRealm. And
who is we?
Sony.
Right. That's why that they're buying everything though, so that there could be no we.
What do you mean?
Well, you said why wouldn't they go after a single studio that fits their needs, so that we being Sony could make our own fighting game using NetherRealms? It's because they don't want that. They want.
Now, who is they in this situation?
Microsoft.
Just making sure.
If the reason they're buying this entire studio and not just, or this entire publisher and company is not so that they don't want to go pick which studio they want to work with, it's that if they announce, oh well, now Sony is working directly with, or Microsoft has bought Blizzard, Sony's like, well, time to go buy the rest of Activision or something like that, so that they know what they're going in. So it's a competition market. It's they're buying up the full market in that specific company instead of just buying one at a time.
Right, but that's my point. Is I think that's stupid because
that's how business works.
No, it's not necessarily.
No, it absolutely is. When you have a competitor and you have distributors, you buy up everything and not just small things at once.
But there's no reason to buy.
If you can.
What good reason is there to buy Beanox and High Noon? They got those.
They got them essentially for free when you think about it, because they really paid for Activision Blizzard, but they got everything else under the sun for free. Why not take it? They didn't care about that. That studio is virtually worthless to them. The studio virtually makes no money to them. So why not just have it just to have it? It's the same.
This brings up something that we haven't really talked about.
Well, I was going to say it's the same as if Sony bought Sega. If Sony bought Sega, they're getting Atlas. But there's all these little itty-bitty Sega studios they don't necessarily care about, but they have them all anyways. So why not? If you're spending this much money, why not just capture everything?
Because I don't think one studio costs this much money. That's the thing. I don't think.
Well, it's not just the studio that costs money, though. It's the idea behind the product, and it's the product, and it's the marketing, IPs. And it's everything. It's the value of the company.
Yeah, but I'm saying if you go buy like the example you used was NetherRealm. We don't want Mortal Kombat. We want to have NetherRealm make our own, I don't know, PlayStation mascot fighter game. They don't need the IP for Mortal Kombat. They don't need DC. Hey, we're in bed with Disney. You're going to do Injustice, except it's Marvel. Like, they don't need the IP. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, like, obviously there's merit to buying full companies. You'd probably want to buy all of Sega rather than just Persona Team, because you would get Sonic, Mario at the Olympics. You would get all this kind of stuff. But I don't think Sony needs to do that necessarily. They need to, it makes more sense to do targeted acquisitions, in my opinion.
Maybe for
Go buy
Sony.
Supergiant. But I was talking about Sony. That was my point. Is I'm talking about what I think Sony should do, and it's targeted acquisitions. I see no reason to buy these big companies.
Well, especially that was my counter argument to you, though, is because for Microsoft they have that kind of expenditure money from other sources, not just their gaming division.
So let me look. So Saul, I think what you're trying to get at, and it kind of ties into something that Chris I think is getting at, and we just haven't outright said necessarily. So you're saying that in this case, the reason Sony would go ahead and buy Wholehearted is so that they can go ahead and get everything at once, and then they can't be potentially piecemealed by Microsoft getting there first. So they're just going in, buying, so they get what they want out of it, but get the rest.
Right, because Microsoft has more expendable funds than Sony does in this regard. So that if Sony was going around buying just studio at a time, and Microsoft caught on, we actually just saw this happen. This is a perfect example of Sony bought Bethesda. So Sony was like, let's get Firesprite. Let's pick up House Marquee. Let's pick up Bluepoint. So then Microsoft's like, well, let's get Activision Blizzard. Because instead of picking up these little small things, Microsoft just outright took the next big publisher company they could. Which, this is why I say that, to be fair, this is still not a monopoly. Is because A, there's still sellers in the market that are available. until Square or FromSoft or other massive companies start getting sucked up by only one of these companies. This competition is still happening. But B is because Microsoft, even though they have this money to spend, they're still third in marketplace. There's absolutely and with them saying what they did about Call of Duty, you're thinking about, okay, this can mean one of two things. It can mean that they want Games Pass on PlayStation so that PlayStation users have access to Call of Duty, or that Call of Duty likely is not to be exclusive for now. It's likely to have a couple more years before it becomes full-on exclusive. So you have this weird window right now of, especially until this buyout is 100% done, of it's kind of meaningless in a weird way. It does not affect Sony in the grand scheme of things.
You're saying the purchase is meaningless until it goes through.
Well, not only that, but until something is done with these IPs. So like it's the same with like the Bethesda buyout. You know, we didn't see much of that of value until they announced that Elder Scrolls was going to be Microsoft only.
Yeah,
so do you think Diablo and Overwatch 2 are exclusives?
I don't know. I don't think so. I would think that Overwatch 2, they're going to do it like Deathloop, where it was already announced, or if it was already announced. I don't know if it was announced already or not for PlayStation, but if it was already announced, it's going to be honored. And Diablo, I'm pretty sure, was already announced for PlayStation. So I don't think they would go back on their word because they haven't done it yet. We've yet to see them announce something and say, oh, we're not going to do this now.
Well, I guess a third-party publisher... Yeah, Starfield. But a third-party publisher saying we're putting our game on everything isn't the same as we've signed an exclusive deal for your game. I don't think... Like, it would be bad optics, but at the same time, no, it wouldn't, because we just bought you.
No,
why would we give you Diablo for? Yeah. Just because I say, hey, I'm going to give you and Brett a sandwich, and then I go, you know what? I was hungry. I saw I ate your sandwich. I'm giving it to Brett instead.
Well, historically, if you were a person that said, I'm going to give you all a sandwich, and you gave us a sandwich, then it's less likely for me to have a worry in my head that you would eat my sandwich. The same way as historically, Microsoft has kept this exclusive deal kind of away from things that have already been promised on current consoles. So historically, we've seen Deathloop get missed by the bullet, Ghostwire Tokyo missed by the bullet. So why would I think that Diablo is not going to get missed by the bullet if it's already been announced for PlayStation?
Diablo is not an exclusive contract with PlayStation. Deathloop and Ghostwire were specific contracts to. We are only on PlayStation.
Well, it's the same could be said for Elder Scrolls though, but the opposite.
But not exclusive. That's what I'm saying.
Let's back up because, one of the things that got weird there is that there was talk that Sony was aiming to actually give Bethesda money, pay for a timed exclusivity window for Starfield prior to this buyout. And it would always came down to whether or not it moved. And as we're seeing, it didn't move. Because if Sony would have actually secured that, I think that we would still be getting Starfield as a timed exclusive. That or behind the scenes, Microsoft thought that Starfield was such a big thing that they were willing to break contract on one of those and have to deal with the ramifications of breaking contract. Those are the two options, basically. But let's back up for a second. Because I think what Chris was kind of homing in on, and I get where you're coming from too, Saul, is that in an ideal situation, right, Sony can buy something outright because you get development teams out of that. You get IP out of that. You get teams that you want to work with, as well as teams that you have for support or whatever you need. And then you just build your internal studios that much more, which Sony clearly is something that they're doing, but they're doing it not on a publisher level. Now, what gets weird is because Sony's not doing this publisher level thing, and almost everything that they've bought has been things that control their own IP or that they already owned enough of the IP of. Like if you think about buying Bluepoint, Bluepoint doesn't really own any IP. Everything that they've done is just remasters. So you're strictly buying a studio, a name, and its workforce that does great work, right? And I think what what Chris is kind of putting at is we've seen Sony take this move of not worrying about IP as much. Like when they bought Insomniac, Insomniac owned two IP. They owned Fuse and they owned the IP to the Xbox Sunset Overdrive that they got. And that was the only two IP, and it was owned outright by Insomniac, the developer, not some kind of overarching level thing like Activision, where you're paying a lot of extra money for IP that is dead, but it is part of the company and you're paying it. Now, in this, clearly what we're talking about here is that Microsoft has the money to go ahead and spend this overage and go ahead and buy an entire Activision Blizzard King for not only what they're currently producing that's worth it, but all these old things that may not necessarily be worth as much, but they're part of the purchase nonetheless. Sony, and this is the big kind of thing here, Sony doesn't have this kind of money. As you even said earlier, right? So you said Microsoft has this extra spending money.
Because they have extra divisions that are, Windows.
Exactly.
I would also kind of push back on that a little bit, because I think Sony may not have the cash on hand, but Sony could get the money if they wanted to. It is still Sony.
They could. But then again, Sony
so
has
here's the big deal. The difference is cash on hand versus risky loans and pulling.
I'm just saying, if Sony was so desperate, they were like, EA, we need you, they would figure out a way to get that.
I think that's
money,
even further proof, though, that this is not a monopoly, because they're not desperate. This does not affect them in a market like that people are thinking it will, by any means. Like, I'm still projecting that Sony will still be number 2 in the market share, where Microsoft will still be number 3 by the end of 2022. There's no way that
Microsoft... You think Tencent's going to overcome Sony? Because right now, Sony's number 1.
Probably, yes.
We'll see how desperate they are, because I'd be willing to bet in a couple of years we're talking about Sony Amazon or Sony Disney or Sony Tencent.
Sony can't buy Disney.
I'm not talking about Sony buying Disney.
He's talking about the other way.
Oh, well, that'd be Disney Sony.
So
wouldn't it? Wouldn't the parent be the...
It's just colloquial. I wasn't really naming the company. It would probably just be Disney.
This is, and there's something that Saul said that we haven't quite gotten back around to. So kind of let's get this back on there, I guess. So from Chris's point of view, he's saying that if Sony is in a position where they want to be fiscally responsible, work within the realm of the money that they have easy access to and doesn't put them in any kind of danger,
right? But
still get things that they know benefit them outright.
Yeah.
That it would be smarter to go to Sega and go, listen, we want the Atlas team, and ideally, we'll buy just the IP for Persona. They could do that. They could do that.
I'm actually surprised they haven't already.
They could say, they could say, listen, we want the Atlas team, and because we don't want to get weighed down by any extra cost, we want to buy the Atlas team, and you can retain full ownership of the Persona IP. We will bring them over here. They're known, and we can, all we want is to be able to say developed by the team that made Persona. They could be able to get marketing rights in that, and then go, hey, here's the new exclusive PlayStation game, brand new original IP from the team that brought you Persona. Right. That could be Sony's feather in a hat. And then you could also do that with the team that brought you Mortal Kombat. Or you don't even need that with a studio like NetherRealm, right? You see NetherRealm on the box. You know who NetherRealm is. So like Chris said, you can go, let me buy the workforce that we know makes amazing fighting games, and then let us use our own IP, let them make new IP, or let them leverage this Marvel IP so that we can do all of this within ourselves. So I think that Chris is really arguing for Sony to be more fiscally responsible with their purchases by seeking out things that are 100% net positives to them, instead of doing what Microsoft is doing and sometimes buying things that end up being, hey, we had the money and the capital around, so we just bought a bunch of parts of this company that really won't benefit us in the long run. Right. But before we get too far out, I guess, Chris, I'll give you a chance to respond.
No, sorry. No, I was just going to clarify, because I think in the end I agree with Saul's point, but I think what my point was more of, if you're going for Persona team, why do you care if Microsoft buys the rest of Sega? Why do you care if Microsoft buys the rest of WB if you got your specific team? That's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, you don't, but that's the thing, is like most people look at this from our perspective, the consumer's perspective. You really don't. The same way I don't care that Microsoft got anything that's in this buyout that's not really Call of Duty. Like, so from like a personal perspective, like I said, I played Overwatch, I've played Diablo. I love those games. Those are good games. But I don't necessarily care that Microsoft has them, because that to me is not forcing me to make any new buying habit, to make any kind of new buying choice. As with these grand IPs, And see, this is the weird part too, is like Atlas, while that's a fantastic example with Persona, I'm glad that Brett clarified that, you know, make a brand new IP from that team, because it's kind of like the Square Enix thing of like, why would Sony buy Square Enix? Because we already see that the market share for those games exist tenfold on Sony consoles, where the same thing for Persona. Like, what Persona game are you going to buy on Xbox right now? Like, there's not a single one. Is Persona 5 Strikers?
Dancing All Night.
Well, yeah, okay. What Xbox fan is playing Dancing All Night, but not 4 or 5?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing.
And that leads me to a thing. Like, I understand that there's exclusivity right now, right, on certain things, and like definitely the new layer of Final Fantasy, where Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 16. We're not seeing, it looks like, Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise. So that's going to be multi-platform. So it looks like Sony's targeting specific games they think are going to leverage them in a big way. They did it with Deathloop, and I think it was a smart choice. Deathloop did do well. It reviewed well, and it was a reason to have a PS5. And if they get really lucky, they'll get similar luck out of Ghostwire Tokyo. They'll get similar luck out of Forspoken. They might get similar luck out of Final Fantasy 16. They probably have a higher chance of getting luck out of 16 than Forspoken, but we'll see. Point being, still nothing within that. Again, it wouldn't be an immediate hit because there's so many contractual agreements there that if Microsoft tried buying Square right now, it would be pointless because they're so tied into years of exclusivity with Sony, just from a contractual standpoint, unless they chose to buy and break. But if the reality is that Microsoft wanted to push, and if you really wanted to go, why would Sony benefit from gaining Square Enix and like actually acquiring them? It would be so that 5 years from now, Microsoft can't find a window where it makes the most sense and go, we're going to buy them because we want the games that Square offers that would give us a bigger up in Japan that we don't ever, like, we've just never really had. And Microsoft has not had a strong performance in Japan. And if they want that, an easy way to do so is to buy out a company like Square and then make every single thing that you can exclusive, and then add everything else that you didn't have exclusivity to Game Pass the moment that you acquire that company. And then suddenly you have a much more attractive Japanese product. So if you look at each isolation and why they might buy a company, Microsoft has enough money and enough ability to just kind of move around and buy these things, cash outright, so long as the board keeps approving them, to eventually reach something that is very, very close to a monopoly. But the reality is that as long as Sony are there and they have the means to make their own games and their own consoles, and Nintendo are there and they can do the same, they're still not a monopoly. They're just getting uncomfortably close. Saul, something you said a little earlier is that, and I make sure I didn't misunderstand it, you said it quite a bit earlier, is this idea of Microsoft, sounded like you were hinting at Microsoft pushing Sony into a position to spend money in a way that would put them at danger to need to sell to stay into a company. Huh? That's kind of what it sounded like, but I'm wanting to double check. Earlier in the show, you had mentioned Microsoft doing this could put business pressure on people.
Pressure, yeah.
Oh, hold up. Chris's laptop crashed.
Hey, sorry about that. Not going to bring it up, but it makes me laugh that Microsoft is actually already listed as an example of an American monopoly. So,
well, they've had antitrust stuff and whatnot back in the 90s. They've had multiple things. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think they're considered a monopoly within gaming. They're just considered a monopoly as a company as a whole.
No, but I guess that's my point. Is they're a monopoly for like Google is a monopoly because of Google, but Yahoo still exists, DuckDuckGo still exists. It doesn't mean small companies can't still exist, but they're still a monopoly.
Sure, sure.
Like Sony could still exist. It doesn't mean Microsoft isn't a monopoly.
And you can bring that up. I don't really care.
I don't want to litigate the whole conversation. It's not worth it because they're not a gaming monopoly. It's just they are very close to more close to a monopoly than people think they are.
It's the closest the gaming industry's ever been to a monopoly. So
yeah, because even if Microsoft let everything stay on PlayStation, at a snap of their fingers, they could take everything away and kill the company.
Basically,
they could.
Yeah. Well, I'd be really interested to actually see what would happen. It would severely damage the company. But I say so. This is what it feels like. But I do have that thing in me that wonders, like, Does Sony still just get by doing what they've always done?
Yeah, they probably do.
And do they get by more than well? Like, does it force them, if they lose games like that, does it force them to want to be like, hey, all PlayStation games are PC day one? Do they move off of do they try and switch to the Sega route of becoming a publisher quicker than worrying more about the next console? I don't know.
Well, see, but wouldn't them being forced into becoming a publisher kind of be the whole, okay, we've killed Sony as they were?
Yeah, that would be
Microsoft killing.
That would be
Sony.
A historical moment. I mean,
right?
No one looks at Sega moving away from being a manufacturer to a publisher. No one looked at that lightly. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, Sony is going to get bought or merged. That's why I was saying Sony Amazon, Sony Disney, because they will merge. They will not be bought, I think, but they're not going to be by themselves much longer. I don't think. Especially if Microsoft was like, yeah, we're going to buy EA tomorrow. Just because we can.
Yeah.
And they could.
They could. So long as EA says yeah. And so long as their board says yeah. You know, the Microsoft board says yeah.
They will. If they approved $70 billion, EA is a lesser company than Activision. They'll say yes.
I am curious what EA would be valued at. I mean, they're definitely they're probably in the 30 to 50 million range. They're significantly higher than the Bethesda was.
Yay. 39.2 billion. So even if Microsoft did the same thing and paid 20 billion over cost, they would be at 59 billion.
God.
So it would still be less than Activision.
Did you see this? Activision CEO claims the company almost merged with EA before Microsoft acquisition.
That would have been crazy. They should have done it. See, why that would have been better.
Yeah, Activision CEO Bobby Kotick has said a merger with EA was almost considered before the Microsoft acquisition. In an interview with VentureBeat, Kotick explains how a deal with Electronic Arts was almost considered due to the company's plans needing thousands of people to be able to execute against our production plans. However, as we now know, they were done by Microsoft. Huh.
That would have been
his quote was, I think that even if we were to have consolidated within EA, that wouldn't have given us what we were going to need going forward. And so you needed to have a bigger partner in order to make it work. What's up, Grundy?
Yes, I'm back.
We're back, baby. Bro. Chris is back too. We're already recording, so let's just keep going with it. This, I think, is interesting for the episode, so I'll go ahead and bring it back up to you because it's interesting to see how this goes. Apparently, Bobby Kotick has said that a merger with EA was almost considered before the Microsoft acquisition.
Are you talking about with Microsoft? A merger?
No. Activision was going to merge with EA.
Oh, that would have been terrible.
And yeah, that's pretty interesting and weird.
I would consider that the worst possible future.
Oof, completely disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I think that would have been significantly better for the industry as a whole than what's happening now.
I think so too.
I don't think that this has anything to do with it. I don't think this.
I don't necessarily think that. I think that's good. Again, it's the same thing as before. I just think that. I think this could potentially. Okay, it's kind of weird, right? History with EA and buying out makes you think no, because a lot of good stuff might be closed down and shuttered. But at the same time, I'm trying to be really mindful of what constitutes being good and bad, and what are you really looking at it for? Because if you look at kind of what we're talking about here, there's a lot of benefit that could come from Microsoft, right? Microsoft could deal with all the stuff that's going on and making the place, a sexual abuse haven and stuff at Activision. They could actually alleviate the reins on Call of Duty a little bit because they don't need Call of Duty to be their big money machine like Activision did. Activision had to have Call of Duty yearly, so they had a certain yearly income. But now that they're within Microsoft's fold and that expectation is going to be considerably less, and it won't be the pillar of the company, all they really need to do with Call of Duty is still make it good, get it out there better. So it makes more sense for them to be like, we're going to let you make Call of Duty with a break between every year. That way, when it comes back, people are more excited about it. But Warzone can be the evergreen version, and Call of Duty campaigns and smaller multiplayer modes will be 2 years, they could do that, and they could free up some of these teams that maybe got put onto Call of Duty when they didn't really want to. Like Toys for Bob had plenty of people leave. They could free these teams back up to make their own things. These are all things that could happen at Microsoft. Will they? I don't know that answer. And is that the only thing that's good, right? Is all of the good that the people making the games are going to be in a better position? That is a great thing. But just because they're in a better position, what does that do for the market? What does that do for the consumer side of things? Is our side of things automatically better if the developer and company side of things are better? Maybe, maybe not. And I don't exactly know how to break those things down. So it is weird. I'm not sure. If I had to be honest, I'm not sure why I think that this is in my gut not the best move for the industry, but something that's happening nonetheless. But there's just something about it to where I think a change to this magnitude has to have some kind of an impact that is going to be hard to completely understand. And I think maybe the strongest thing I've heard so far is Chris's example of all it would take potentially, and this might be the biggest thing, is that Microsoft acquires one more company, two more companies, and then has the ability to strongly negatively impact Sony or Nintendo, but probably more Sony since Nintendo lives a little bit more in a bubble.
Well, let's just
by just saying, and then I'll let you go. Sorry, Saul, but all they could just literally snap their fingers and go, all these games that we said were going to be multi-platform are now exclusive. You won't have them on PlayStation, and suddenly PlayStation loses a lot of games that can sell, which is where the bulk majority of their money comes from. So that might be the scariest version of what could happen is that a company is historically important to gaming and definitely modern gaming as Sony gets knocked out by a snap of fingers. But what were you going to say, Saul?
That won't ever happen. Industry lawyers will not let that happen. There's literal
maybe.
No. There is no maybe.
I'm too ignorant. I don't know.
There's literally monopoly laws in place to not let stuff like that happen. Which is why you would people calling this a monopoly need to take a look at what a monopoly truly is, and the fact that there is no one seller market right now. That's not what this is. What?
Google's a monopoly,
How?
and there are multiple search engines. It literally look up at monopolies, and Google is the top one. Just because it doesn't have to be one person running it. It has to be someone with so much power that there's nobody who can be better than them. I think.
That's not
entirely sure. But even the definition that I said earlier, it doesn't mean one person only.
So what is Google monopoly of?
A search engine.
So things like Bing and DuckDuckGo that still exist and they're still profitable. How wouldn't that not classify them as not a monopoly? Because they're still profitable.
No, that doesn't. In October 2020, the Justice Department in 11 states said Google has had illegally maintained a monopoly over online search engines and the ads that appear in user search results.
Are they legally classified a monopoly, or are they using that as a slang term, saying that they just have the highest search engine optimization and power and population? Because there's two different things. A lot of people are using monopoly as a slang term, saying, "Oh yeah, they're the most popular," but that's not what monopoly means.
No, it's not. Monopoly means the exclusive possession or control of the supply chain. Yes, but
so if there's still sellers on the market, then that's not a monopoly. If sellers cannot thrive because of a company, then they are not a monopoly. The whole thing with AT&T that just got broken up is a perfect example of a true corporate monopoly. If Bing can still thrive, if DuckDuckGo can still thrive, if these companies can still thrive and be profitable, then Google is not a true monopoly. If PlayStation can still remain among market leaders higher than Microsoft after this, then this is not a monopoly. People are throwing that term around as if that monopoly means that they are the one-shot, one-go thing. That literally companies close because of this. You could classify Walmart as a monopoly for local markets. But if Whole Foods still makes more money than Walmart, which they don't, but if they did, they're no longer a monopoly.
So I'm kind of looking because I do think it's interesting, and there's examples of times like AT&T was a monopoly.
Yep, that just got broken up like last year.
Microsoft is considered a monopoly in many ways, and this actually says that this is kind of what it looks like for monopoly. So this is just a quick sentence that I think is pretty interesting. For everything, there is a reason, even for monopolies. Monopolies often can help a country or region build or shore up its infrastructure quickly, efficiently, and effectively. But when any company becomes too dominant, leaving little room for adequate competition, service quality and consumer wallets can suffer, and that's where antitrust laws come
and that
in.
hasn't
So
happened
you might be
yet.
correct, is that antitrust laws are there, and I know we're not there in gaming.
No, we're not there in gaming. We're not there in search engines. We're not there in
hopefully
now,
we're not saying
FCC
that,
lawyers stepped in with AT&T because that was going to be a thing. With AT&T becoming a true monopoly, Microsoft is not going to become a monopoly over this. It's the same as Bethesda. Like we're saying, like, oh, this could be like market shattering. To this day, like, was Bethesda only brought up again because of this? The buyout, that's something everybody forgot about. The market did not change. Games still cost $60 and $70. You still know where to look for Sony. You still know what to look for Microsoft. That's how it's going to be.
Yep.
I mean, what is different right now?
I agree with you.
What is different right now after this buyout in 1 year? What is different that instead of PlayStation having Call of Duty rights, that now Microsoft has it?
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Just keep all that in.
I just don't think you can judge this deal off this year. Like, you can't judge how the Bethesda affects Sony this year because nothing other than Sony titles have come from Bethesda this year. So you'll see an effect when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out or Starfield. We'll see this year we'll see what happens with Starfield and if that affects anything. But I don't think it's fair to say nothing has happened this year because nothing has happened this year in regards to Bethesda and Microsoft. So,
well, I think for the most part, like when they do come out, like when Elder Scrolls comes out, it's like I think we already got past what would be the internet's meltdown point, which was the announcement.
Okay, sure,
right?
Yep,
like
I
think at this point, it's just now it's letting history run its course of stuff we already know that's going to happen. Which is why I was saying, like, I don't think, like, I think this will be pretty forgettable here real soon. Because for me, and this may just be personal, but for me, it's like whenever Sony announced, like, oh, we have exclusive rights to Call of Duty stuff, I'm like, oh, cool. Next. Like, next, what's going on next? Like, it's like, I kind of move past this kind of stuff more relatively, easier than most until something else happens. Like, until something, I'm sure that we're going to get news that Call of Duty is Games Pass day one, and it will never be an exclusive to Sony again. And then we can speculate, when will Sony do Games Pass at that point, if they do. But until now, it's like I don't really see this being a massive shakeup in gaming. I kind of just see this as like a daily business kind of like, let's move on to the next big thing.
So you're saying, like, on the consumer level, or do you even on the consumer? I guess what you're really saying on the consumer level, it's you don't see any real difference happening even after the acquisition goes through, outside of
right, because
just kind of being a difference of who is actually paying the bills.
Yeah, and then on the business level, I think we're just going to see Sony do something, or at least I think that's the speculation, because
that's what I was curious about. Let me go ahead and ask you that, because then I want to wrap this up with one small conversation that I'm curious to see y'all's thoughts on, because it's been a big thing here. Okay. So what do you think, if there is something, what do you think is Sony's answer to this?
I don't know. I really don't, because like we talked about, I don't think buying Square is the solution. I think that if they bought something like EA, I could see that, but at the same time, I really don't care for EA that much. That's why I said the thought process of EA and Activision pairing up is like, you kind of have like my two least favorite in terms of morality and in terms of like business practices teaming up. So like I'm automatically going to disagree with a lot of stuff they do. But yeah, when we already see Square just continue to be rock stars on Sony platforms. You see Atlas do the same thing, other than having their star on Nintendo stuff with like SMT. So I honestly do not know what Sony will do. I was actually surprised when they got Fire Sprite, so I would be curious as to who they go after next.
Yeah, I think Sony's thing is get good, competent developers who are, and Fire Sprite was pretty new. Fire Sprite was actually started by ex-Studio Liverpool people. So this is Studio Liverpool's who Sony closed down
in like
2012.
2007 or 2012. I thought it was 2017.
Yeah, it might have been 13, but it was around the time that the Vita launched because they came out with Wipeout 2048 and then closed them.
Again, it's fantastic.
So those people left and made Fire Sprite, and I do think it's pretty interesting that after being closed by Sony, they were willing to be reacquired by Sony. But Sony's also in a lot stronger of a position now. So there's that. You have an entire generation of being very dominant with the PS4 to help with that, and seems like they're doing it again with the PS5. But I think Sony's big play here is to get teams that they know they can trust, that they have a good work relationship with, who don't have a lot of IP weighing them down to bump their cost up. Because the thing is that they got a lot of development staff out of the Fire Sprite purchase for not very much money. And the same argument could be talked about with Insomniac. They got a couple of IP. Most of the IP that Insomniac worked on, Sony already owned. So instead, they just get a top-notch host of developers that they pull in. When they bought Naughty Dog, same thing. When they bought Sucker Punch, same thing. Sony does not have a history of buying something to really just brute force its way into it. Normally, it's something that they've worked with enough, and some people don't like the word brute force, but I mean, it really is kind of what goes on. People don't look at the difference of how Sony has always typically bought stuff, which is to work with a developer and work with them enough to earn a position of understanding with them, and then buy them, but seldom do they buy out the ability for other people to enjoy something they've already loved. So in that sense, I think the real thing I want to talk about now, and I want to wrap the show up with, because I'm starving, and I'm sorry, my appetite's been all over the place since COVID. There's this thing going around, and even Colin said it, and Colin is not the only one to say it. But this happened with the Zenimax purchase as well. This idea that goes around across some of the gaming media sphere, a lot of the Twitter sphere for gaming, a little bit of the Facebook sphere for gaming, and a little bit of the scuttlebutt word of mouth, is this idea that Microsoft is just buying out companies that they didn't have a relationship that felt that close with, in order to gain access to things. So we saw them buy out Ninja Theory, which at the time felt weird because Ninja Theory had done far more exclusively with PlayStation, with Hellblade being marketing by PlayStation, not Hellblade, but Heavenly Sword being there. And of course, that wasn't always a great relationship with Sony, but it was what it was. They bought out, of course, they bought out Obsidian. Another thing that just kind of felt like it was out of the blue. They brought up Exile, felt like that was out of the blue. And the big thing that seems to be happening here is this idea that Microsoft just goes out and buys teams that they don't necessarily have a long relationship with, whereas Sony builds them up. And then with that, this idea that Sony builds long-term relationships and then offers ownership up, like we saw them do with Housemarque, Bluepoint, all studios that did pretty much all PlayStation games before their purchase. And how we continue to get good results from these studios, whereas Microsoft is 5 years into their beginning of acquiring a bunch of studios, and for the most part, they don't have a ton to show for it. They do have some to show for it, and I'm not really trying to nail them down, but I want to think there is a level of accountability here where Microsoft says this is to end their shortage of things, and we've kind of all been buying I won't say the lie, but we've all been buying the story of, well, we need time for this to turn around. So the question at large is, do you think in this point that Microsoft is doing a bad thing, or not even say a bad thing, but do you prefer the Microsoft take of just buying up companies that you think have talent, even if you don't necessarily have a good relationship with them? Or do you think the Sony way of building a slow, longer form relationship ends up with better output? Because I think right now there's an interesting split between what each company is actually getting from its output. So Chris, what do you think?
I think it should be a mix of both. I think if you're good at identifying talent, you shouldn't need to spend 20 years building up a relationship just to buy a company because Tencent almost bought them. You know what I mean? Which is what seemed to have happened with Housemarque. You know, it's like Sony doesn't have a great relationship with Supergiant. They seem to have a better one with Microsoft. But you know Supergiant makes great games, so why wouldn't you buy Supergiant? Why wouldn't you go to them and be like, hey, what can we offer you? You know?
Sure.
Just because their game was on Game Pass or whatever, it's like that doesn't mean that you can't go out after them. I think cultivating relationship does do a lot of good work. Gets you things like, you know, Naughty Dog being a proven talent. But Naughty Dog got bought early. You know what I mean? They became that.
They did.
So I think the whole thing is that you just need to be able to be good at cultivating that talent, which is a worry with Microsoft's approach is like, can they cultivate the like 65,000 teams they now have? Is that a thing? Can they turn High Noon and Beanox into great studios? You know, who knows?
Yeah, and that would actually be amazing because they've made good games. I mean, you can point at High Moon, and I think both of the Transformers Cybertron games are excellent games.
Absolutely.
And that's just how things go. So the talent was there. Now, teams change. Is that talent still there? Is that want still there? Do you have to pump these teams back up? Is it sensible to do so? Yeah, I think that's an interesting viewpoint. So, Saul, what is you kind of? It looked like you agreed with Chris. Do you kind of agree that kind of ranging in the middle is the best way to go?
Yeah, I think that. I agree that. I think that there's a place for both ways to do it. I think like as bad as Microsoft gets kicked in the dirt financially from game sales and consoles, not computer sales, Windows sales, any of that junk.
Sure.
That them doing this. I think that it's almost what they feel they have to do, and without having insider numbers or anything, I can't exactly agree that they need to do that. But at the same time, I think that we saw we'll use Ninja Theory as an example. We actually live streamed that E3 and reacted to that. And we still have not seen if that's going to be fruitful for them or not. We have not seen the game that they are, in charge of producing to get out, which is Hellblade 2, until this year. So what was that, like 4 years ago that they announced that? To know that if that was a fruitful buy or not, we don't know. So it's weird.
And real quick, just because I know we had this, and I want to be fair to Xbox on this. I'm really not trying to downplay them because I don't want to act like they never do this. I think a really great example of a studio that I just want to throw out there for anybody who thinks we're trying to throw fire, that's not what's going on. I think a great example of a studio that Microsoft did identify and partner with early and then not buy until they already had a number of games under their belt with them was Playground Games, the developer behind Forza Horizon. They bought them in 2018 at the same time as Ninja Theory, but they had a clear understanding. And ironically, of all the studios they've bought in 2018, Playground Games is one of the only ones that's put out a new game that was developed from the ground up after their acquisition with Forza Horizon 5. Whereas, we have weird little offshoot games like Obsidian's Grounded, but Grounded was in development before the Microsoft purchase happened, and all it did was get released as a Microsoft title. So it's not really in Ninja Theory had that weird hero shooter game that ended up, what was it called, Bleeding Edge or whatever, that didn't end up seeming to do anything, and it ended up being a Microsoft exclusive, but it was something they were already working on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead, Saul. I just wanted to. I think Playground is probably the best example of Microsoft buying a studio that they built up
that we have right now,
years of a relationship with. Yeah.
So like that's the thing
so they know how to do it. They have that pedigree somewhere.
Yeah, and it's something I don't think we're going to see the ripples of this particular buyout or Bethesda's buyout, for a while. That's not a direct, a direct movement from Sony. So it's like people can say, this is going to be detrimental to Sony. I've seen that. I've seen somebody say like Sony has to make a multiplayer game now to compete with Call of Duty. No, they don't, and they shouldn't. They should not make a. We've said this before. They should never make a game just because competition's doing it.
I agree with that.
People buy Sony consoles because they like Sony first-party games, or they like the console themselves, neither of which has to do with multi-platform games. So that when you do have, I'm not saying that you can't lose business from multi-platform games. If all your friends play Call of Duty and they go to Xbox, well, that's actually a bad example because now that, Xbox and Call of Duty, but previously, if all your friends play Apex on PlayStation and they go to Xbox, that could very well much move you to Xbox, but that has nothing to do with what Sony has done. And that's the more casual kind of thing I think that happens. So, yeah, in terms of this, like, I don't necessarily disagree with, anything. I don't think that this is going to do much of anything. I think that if anything, it's like what Phil said about Games Pass. I think the only thing it's going to do is force individuals, not Sony themselves, but it's going to force individuals to look at Sony and expect an answer. And I don't think that will, I don't know. It's hard to predict that kind of stuff. You don't know if you'll get it or not. So it certainly has already done that. It certainly has already forced people to say, well, what's Sony's answer to this? So I think honestly, I think that's 50% of reason why Microsoft does this. Because Phil Spencer's a very smart man when it comes to PR. And you got to think about it. In the last 5 years, when has Microsoft had bad PR? Like a bad case of PR. It's very rare. Same for Sony. But it's he knows what he's doing when it comes to PR. Just the same as last week when he asked the question of Games Pass and Sony's service and day in and day out first party games for Sony, is that it did that. It made people think like, okay, well, yeah, Sony, what are you doing? It made them question and expect. And individuals who know better, they don't care. They'll ask that same question mentally of like, yeah, what would they do? But they're not expecting an answer, where the more casual people are, and it's putting a little bit of pressure on Sony, or it seems like it is. It doesn't always do it because those questions don't get answered sometimes. So
right. Well, I think it's also this bubble that happens, because one of the things that came out from this is that Game Pass is. And I say only because of the breadth of systems that technically it's available on. With Game Pass being available across all Xbox One consoles, all Xbox Series consoles, technically on phone now if you really wanted to do it, and then PC, it seems interesting that Game Pass is still only at 25 million subscribers. So we hear this talk about inevitability, and I'm not saying he's wrong, but at the same point, 25 million subscribers, when you think about all of the gamers that are out there, is not quite the number that I would have expected. I know that it kind of grew real quick, and I'm not saying 25 million is anything to scoff at. You and I talked about this other day, Saul, right? Even if every single one of those people got in for that dollar a month, or $1 for 3 months, exploit or whatever it be, you're still dealing with $25 million, which is
monthly.
Yeah. Which is not anything to scoff at. And yet, even with that, we're seeing that Microsoft is third behind Tencent and Sony. So I think that it goes to show that Game Pass the Game Pass thing may be an inevitability. And Phil might be right. Or maybe there's a reason that Sony is still doing perfectly fine without the Game Pass model at play. Now, clearly they don't think that entirely because they're dealing with Spartacus to some degree, but we still don't know what Spartacus is. We keep hearing about it being this Game Pass thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not. Maybe it just really isn't. And maybe we're getting weird mixed information. I tend to believe that it's going to be at the very least some kind of a relabel to how they handle PS Plus and PS Now, and probably the added backwards compatibility like we were talking about. But we'll wait to see what that is and what that means and how that impacts Sony. And if by the end of this year, next year, whenever this Activision thing goes through, if anything's really different, I think I kind of agree in that sense. But I don't think that there's anything else about this that I find too necessary to talk about. I agree with much of you. I think there's no reason to look at a studio that makes great games and not go after them if you know they make great games. I think Chris made a good point. Supergiant makes great games. And just because Sony doesn't have the absolute best relationship with them doesn't mean they can't go in there and say, hey, we like your work. We like the kind of games you do. We'd like to have them on our system and represent our system. And what can we do? What kind of workplace are you looking for? What kind of money are you looking for? There's a lot of questions to be had. And one of the things that I think from a management standpoint, can really work better with the way that we at least outwardly see Sony versus Microsoft approaching these things. And Microsoft could still be approaching it right, but they don't have the built-in trust that some of the developers do when Sony goes to them and goes, Bluepoint, we know that you like being independent. We know that you like having your own freedom of choosing what you want to do, but we think you guys do great work. And we think that we've shown time and again that our work environment is conducive to the way that y'all enjoy making games and making great products. And as a result, we think buying you out and still giving you all the freedom that you've always gotten with us makes you a good fit for us. And I think it makes studio management in a position like that be way easier to go, you know what? I feel good about this. Let's go ahead and do it. And that's the thing, is just because Microsoft has money does not mean that Microsoft will get the yeah. If a developer really doesn't like the idea of working with Microsoft for any number of reasons, they have the ability to go, we appreciate the offer, but you're not the work environment that we're looking for.
Right.
And that might be the basic answer. And maybe Sony's real retaliation to this is nothing more than doing what they've always been doing and just going to people and go, listen, we're offering you this acquisition opportunity because we think that we'd be a good fit for you, and we'd help you thrive into making the things that you want to make and have always wanted to make. Whereas I think Xbox has a little bit more of a burden of proving that is actually what they're aiming to do. There's this online Twitter sphere thing right now going on where if Days Gone had been an Xbox property, maybe it'd be getting a sequel. And like we said last week, maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. Maybe this is just people accrediting something to Microsoft that's not really true. And we don't know that yet because Microsoft hasn't had the output to let us see that. It's nice that there's people that think that that's what's going on and have that feeling toward them. But for now, I think we're still in this game of Microsoft is in wait and see. And all these acquisitions ultimately still don't show us exactly what Activision wants to do, while we all still have to wrangle with whether or not exclusivity comes into play.
Right.
So I think that's it for me. Thank you guys for joining me. Glad we were still able to do this, even with a couple of technical problems. Chris, glad you were able to make it back around. Anything you guys want to close off with, or y'all good?
I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I think we got to get into the outro rigmarole. But before we do that, I do want to express our plans as we have discussed with Chris. Saul, I haven't had a chance to completely talk with you on this. We originally were going to have Chris come down a weekend in February for episode 250, but since we had a couple of delays in episodes and things, that pushed it. So now Chris is going to be coming down the weekend of February 26th. On the 27th is when episode 250 should be, if we've done our math correctly, which I can't believe that there's a way we hadn't. So expect for us to do a live episode on that Sunday, the 27th, followed by, let me make sure I'm getting this right. Is it just going to be Chris and you, Saul, seeing who can get the furthest in a single run of Slay the Spire? Is there a way to do competitive in Slay the Spire? How are we going to be doing this?
I don't think there's a way to do competitive Slay the Spire. Is there, Chris? I don't think I'll do it in the game. Yeah, so it'll just be. I guess we could just do kind of
like we did with Dead Cells, where we see how far someone can get in a single run.
See who wins in an hour the most time.
Yeah,
of course, we'll just be hanging out.
Going.
Yeah, I will be modding out. I'd be being the mod and the person who's answering questions. You guys can hang out with us, talk with us, chat with us. We had a listener who asked if we've thought about transitioning to a live show, and there's a lot of reasons why we quite haven't. Some of them are technical reasons, some of them are time reasons, and whether or not a Sunday morning is going to be ideal for most people to be able to join. But there's your opportunity to come in, hang out with us on a live. We're going to start trying to do those more often, at least every milestone episode. Not necessarily Chris flying down, but the idea of a live episode, if nonetheless. I mean, if Chris could fly down once a quarter, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a lot of time and commitment.
If you want me to fly down once a quarter, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/Nartech.
Chris knew exactly where I was going with it. Yeah, but you can make that happen by going over to patreon.com/Nartech, like the Lord Corgi did this past week, even though we've been off and on. Thanks a ton. Everyone who's joined lately, you guys are awesome. Sorry for the episode if it's a little out of hand. I tried my best to maintain it in my COVID-filled mind. So hope you enjoyed it. And I think the biggest last question here is, what do you individually think of the Activision merger? That'll be our community's take for next week. I won't say merger, the Activision buyout, because that's what it is. In a lot of ways, Xbox isn't becoming Xbox Activision Blizzard King. So what do you think of this buyout, this acquisition? You can, of course, always let us know in the comments below. You can hit us up on the Discord and just talk everything about this episode with us in the Discord or the podcast open discussion segment there. The Community's Take question, where we'll actually kind of read some of your answers next week, that's also on there. There's a dedicated channel that you can answer once we ask the question, and there you can also do that on Twitter at Triangle SQRD and on Facebook at Triangle Square, the PlayStation Podcast Group. Remember, be asked to let in, we'll gladly let you in. But I think until next week, this has been episode 245. So we will be back next week to see you guys for 246. And we thank you a ton.
Thank you.
Shout outs to our patrons. I don't have that up, but we know that one of them is Mr. Lord Corgi. So, Lord Corgi, thanks for being our newest patron. You get the big shout out. And let's see. Apparently, I got to relog into our Patreon. This is what you get, guys. You get on-the-fly stuff right here, okay? We have the Lord Corgi, Salvador Garcia, Ham and Egger, Bailey Robertson, Rob Wortpoint, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Richard Schaefer, Rude Days 93, Joshua Lago, Kevin Bacon Bits, Luke Rabbit, Luke Bartolomeo. Sorry, it's the same guy, but you get listed twice. Thanks, Luke. Danny Villalobos, Solitary Red, Jehudi MD, Sean, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Constantly Kenny, Matthew Green, Sean Santarud, Stephen Salazar, Shadowist, and of course, my name is Dan. Thank you all for your long months of patronage, for those who have been around for a long time, and for the new ones. Thank you very much. We will see y'all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.